What's up, guys? Welcome back to Sunday Sports Club podcast with Allison Kuch, a podcast all about sports. And sometimes we don't talk about sports because at the end of the day, it's my fucking podcast. So today on Sunday Sports Club podcast, we're not talking about sports at all because we're going to be talking about what's going on currently in my life. It's kind of like a life update. And I also want to be emphasizing on postpartum because Scotty, my daughter, is coming up on her year birthday, like in 2 months. Okay. So we have some time still, which is crazy because the year has gone by so fast. But I put up a Q&A box on my Instagram and so many people were asking about postpartum. And I was like, can I even talk about postpartum on my podcast? But at the end of the day, it's my podcast. So like if I don't want to talk about something super, super sports heavy, I feel like I should be able to do that. But my postpartum journey does involve sports because as you guys all know, Isaac was with the Las Vegas Raiders last year, and I was thinking I was going to give birth in Vegas, and then I didn't. So football definitely has a little bit of an impact on my postpartum experience, and even more so now because we're currently in football season. I think we're heading into like week 7, and it's a little weird with Isaac not being on a football team. And I just want to get this out of the way before I start today's episode. If you're a hater, just get the fuck out now because I'm going to be kind of giving my unfiltered thoughts and feelings in today's episode. And not everybody likes to hear that. I actually recently as in the past few weeks, had a clip of my podcast talking about my postpartum experience. And like I mentioned getting a night nurse and it went viral. And so many people were like, girlie, read the room. But I think you can't compare anybody's struggle to somebody else's struggle because obviously somebody's going to be going through worse things. And I just feel like that's not fair for like what somebody else might be going through. I totally understand that there is privilege with certain lifestyles. There's privilege with jobs and my husband being at home. Like I can sit here and defend like, oh yeah, like I struggled through postpartum, but my husband was at home. So like I didn't struggle that much. Like there's so much that I'm grateful for. So it's really hard talking about my postpartum and also putting into account everybody else's experience too, because obviously there are other women who are struggling so much more than I struggled. So I just want to put that out there. That's a huge disclaimer, but like, it's really hard to talk about my experience very raw because I feel like I can get so much hate for my experience, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's jump into today's episode. I feel like we have to rewind all the way back and then I'll bring you guys back up to speed to like what's currently happening in my current day-to-day life because I'm currently going through a little bit of an identity crisis. I always thought that Isaac retiring from the NFL or not being on an NFL team would make him go through an identity crisis, but I feel like him not being on a team right now is kind of making me have an identity crisis. And I also feel like postpartum goes hand in hand with that because as a mom, I understand that so much of my life revolves around my daughter. And even I feel like weird talking about this because I don't want anybody to think that like I have negative feelings toward my daughter. It's actually the opposite is that I'm so obsessed with my daughter and I love being a mom, but I feel like that's all I know right now. And like that's all I am. So that's a little teaser as to what you can expect from what I'm currently going through, but let's rewind all the way to when I gave birth. I always knew that I was going to have a breech birth. Like my daughter was breech from 30 weeks on, and I tried literally everything to get my daughter to turn out of the breech position. If you guys don't know what breech is, her head was up and her butt was down and she was frank breech. So her legs were on like both sides of her head. Like she was like folded like a taco kind of. So I knew pretty early on that the idea of a C-section, like it was out there and my doctor in Vegas was open to trying something called an ECV. I apologize if you guys are here for sports because I'm literally talking about my C-section right now and I don't even care. Like I'm talking about getting cut open. I'm not talking about somebody getting cut. I'm talking about getting cut open. That's just whatever. It's my podcast. So my doctor in Vegas was planning on doing an ECV, which is where they manually turn your child out of the breech position. It's if you look it up on TikTok, it's very graphic. Like they literally lube up your belly and try and turn the baby from the outside. But there's a lot of risks involved. If the cord was wrapped around her neck, it could have affected her oxygen. They do it in a hospital just to ensure like the baby's okay, you're okay. I've heard it's a very painful experience, okay? One of my friends did it and she was like, I would not do that again. I honestly would get a C-section. And like the odds you get a C-section are still there. Like any birth, you can still get a C-section. So when my husband got cut from the Raiders, I ended up having to switch doctors because we made the decision to leave Vegas and go back to Orange County because we were way more comfortable in Orange County than we would be in Vegas, where we no longer felt welcome, which I know our friends were still welcoming. But once you get cut from a team, it's kind of like, okay, I want to leave as soon as possible. So once we got back to Orange County, I called up my doctor, literally driving back from Vegas to Orange County. I think it's like a 4-hour drive. And I was like, hey, if I go into labor, just letting you know, you're my doctor again. Made an appointment with him and we went into the doctor's office and he was like, yeah, I'm not doing an ECV on you. Like, this is your first pregnancy. She looks like a big baby. And he was like, I just don't really feel comfortable. He was like, I would have done it at like 37 weeks and now you're 38 and a half. So I'm not going to be doing that. So I feel like that was a really hard pill to swallow because I was like, okay, now I'm not going to be having like this vaginal birth. And I never thought I would be, I'm not a planner. I'm not a type A type of person. I move every single year. No, I move every 6 months. I can't be a type A person. I'm a type B person. Like I'm the friend who was like, oh yeah, I left my ID at this bar like 3 months ago. I should probably go get it. Like I'm that person. So when it came to having a certain birth, I never thought that I would be so obsessed with a certain birth. And then I found out I was having a C-section. I was like, wait, I don't want this. But I had no choice because once you have a baby inside your stomach, you have to get it out somehow. So my doctor was like, okay, let's schedule the C-section. He was like, so how's Friday? I think it was Monday. And I was like, wait, whoa, you're moving a little fast. At least ask for my number. No, I was not mentally prepared because up until that point, I had been doing so many things to turn my daughter out of the breech position. I was going to an acupuncturist in Vegas. I was going to a chiropractor. I was literally upside down half of the day. I was watching TV upside down. I was swimming. We had a pool in our rental in Vegas, and I was just doing flips in the pool all day. And my dogs were like, what the fuck is going on with this woman? But they were enjoying it because, you know, they love swimming. So I would literally be in the pool and throwing the ball for them. And nothing worked. There's this thing called spinning babies that's supposed to turn your baby out of a breech position. None of it worked. And I was defeated. You guys, I would literally be laying in bed and just try and turn her. I don't recommend doing that. But come to find out, my daughter was 9 pounds, 6 ounces. So it made a lot of sense as to why she wasn't turning. She was a big baby, big, long baby, which makes sense, you guys. Like Isaac and I are both over 6 feet tall. I'm 5'11", but like get over it. So it made sense as to why she didn't turn. But up until that point, I had been putting all my energy into turning her out of the breech position. So when he was like, okay, we're scheduling the C-section, I was like, well, maybe there's still a chance. No, there was no chance that she was ever going to be turning. So that was like the first, no. What am I saying? The first part of me not getting the birth I wanted was I wasn't giving birth in Vegas at the hospital. I had toured with the doctor I had been getting comfortable with. And I was no longer going to be doing postpartum in a bedroom I pictured bringing our daughter home to. In hindsight, I am very thankful because our rental in Vegas had cheetah carpet. And for some reason, I couldn't get over the hump of picturing bringing a newborn home to a home with cheetah carpet. Okay, that's just the fact that I'm an interior designer, okay? Obviously, I know cheetah carpet is not the worst thing in the world, but the overarching theme is like I pictured a certain postpartum, a certain birth, a certain hospital. I had none of that. All of that got switched. And I was like, okay, so good thing I'm a type B type of person. But at the same time, I still like have standards. Like, can I at least have one thing? So I guess I did have one thing. And that thing I'm very grateful for is that my husband was there for my birth. Now, granted, I was planning on having a C-section, so he would have been there anyways. Like, I'm not going to schedule my C-section for a day that he's playing a football game in a different state. But I'm grateful that he was there for not only the birth, but like staying in the hospital for 3 days. That's something he would not have been able to do. I was grateful that he was there during like the late nights, postpartum, and all of that. That is something that like I am utterly grateful for that we would not have had he had been on a team. So I end up scheduling my C-section. I was like, no, Friday seems too soon. Saturday? So scheduled it for Saturday, and like the few days leading up to my birth, I don't even feel like I ever talked about this. I was like rushing around trying to get our house somewhat ready because we were planning on knocking down that house. So something I haven't really talked about is that we were starting renovations on our house here in California the week we ended up moving back into it. So they had taken out the ductwork, they had taken out like the AC unit and like random things that all of a sudden I needed. So like we didn't have heat, and that's something that like I know a lot of people don't have heat or AC units and they have babies and they're okay. But I was like, what the fuck? Like my husband was literally just on a football team and I was just about to have this birth. Like everything just got switched. So for the week leading before my C-section, I was not nesting. I was not like, oh, this is beautiful. Let's do my maternity photos. No, I was running around. I was like, okay, I need to make this feel like home again. Okay. Okay, guys, if you know anything about me, you know I'm not the best cook, but I do love cooking, especially cooking for my daughter now that she's eating solids. I've been cooking up meals every single day, and I've honestly fallen in love with my Caraway cook set. Okay, I first discovered them on social media. I saw how beautiful they were, and I was like, wait, I want that cook set, even though I don't cook. So yes, they look very aesthetic sitting on my stovetop. I ended up getting the navy color, and it's chef's kiss, pun intended. But I also love the fact that they are non-toxic cookware free of dangerous chemicals. And as a mom, and also somebody who eats off the Caraway cook set, it gives me peace of mind. When I was picking out my pans, it was a difficult process, I'm not gonna lie, only because I didn't know what color to get, because there's so many colors to choose from and they're all aesthetic. They all would look great in my new kitchen that's about to be done being renovated. But beyond the fact that they look good, they also cook food well, which is why you would buy a cook set, right? So my husband cooks all the meals in this family, and he's been loving on them, saying that they're easy to clean, no food sticks to the bottom. Essentially, he's in love with them just as much as he's in love with me. Caraway's internet famous cookware set comes with a saute pan, fry pan, Dutch oven, and saucepan, plus lids for them all. And they even have this convenient canvas lid holder, so you can just hang it on your cabinet, and it's really easy. Storage is a breeze. It's the ultimate kitchen setup and will save you $150 versus buying the items individually. So ditch the chemicals with Caraway. Caraway Home's non-toxic kitchenware features a chemical-free ceramic coating so food can be prepared with peace of mind that no hard to pronounce chemicals. You know what I'm saying? So visit carawayhome.com/Sunday to see all of our favorite products and take an additional 10% off your next purchase. This deal is exclusive for our listeners, so visit carawayhome.com/Sunday or use code Sunday at checkout. Caraway, non-toxic cookware made modern. So I ended up having my C-section. I have no regrets about having a C-section. I had a dreamy C-section. I loved my C-section. I would do it 10 times over again. Now, next birth, I definitely want to try a VBAC, which is a vaginal birth after C-section, just because I want that experience. But at the end of the day, if I don't get that experience, I'm kind of okay with it because I loved my C-section that much. I think because it was a planned C-section, my doctor was like super chill. He was like, whatever you want to make it feel like as much of your birth as possible. I got to make my playlist and have like a certain song my daughter was born to. And my doctor was super comforting in that aspect. He like made sure we had an ocean front room for our recovery. Anyways, I loved my C-section. There are a few things that I would recommend if you're having a C-section to make it a good C-section. One, I got to have my daughter immediately on my chest after birth. I was like, don't put her in a diaper. Who cares? Just like put the baby on my chest, because skin to skin is something that I thought I was going to lose out on when having a C-section. You don't have to lose out on it. Find a doctor that's okay with putting the baby directly on your chest when your incision is literally open. Like, my doctor could see my intestines and I was like, nope, I want the baby on my chest. Second thing is ask for a belly block, okay? A belly block is something I had never heard of before, and I didn't know this was like a good standard or like a good practice to have when you have a C-section. So my doctor recommended it. He was like, I'm going to have the anesthesiologist put in a belly block. It's basically you don't feel your stomach for a few days, okay? This changed the game because everyone complaining about being in so much pain after they had their C-section, I didn't feel anything for like 4 or 5 days. So at that point, I'm already in the recovery process. And the few days in the hospital, I was actually able to enjoy that time with my daughter, with Isaac. And I don't remember being in a ton of pain at all. I think I had like some nerve pain, but a belly block. Highly recommend a belly block. Third thing is ask to make a music playlist, okay? You can shop around doctors, as far as I'm aware, but in your coverage, but you can find a doctor that kind of aligns with the type of birth that you want to have. My doctor is super chill. Anything I like asked him, he never made me feel stupid or whatever. So those are my 3 tips for having a dreamy C-section, okay? Now, when it comes to recovery, I feel like I could make an entire podcast on C-section recovery and recovery from birth. But for today's episode, we're going to kind of stick to postpartum. So when I got home, I was like, okay, so now we're home. Isaac at that point had made the decision to not sign to any practice squad, just to be there for me. And he was like, I've completed 7 years in the NFL. Like, I obviously want to be playing football, but right now supporting my wife and being with my family kind of trumps chasing after the NFL right now, right? Like, practice squad is so, like, he could still get released on practice squad, and that was a hard decision for him to make, but at the same time kind of easy, because he's like, okay, this is my daughter. Like, this is the most important thing in my life now. Whereas in football is like, it goes lower in the totem pole. It's like my wife, my daughter. That's controversial, right? Like, have you guys seen those TikToks? It's like mom is number 1, daughter's number 2, and wife is number 3. No, your wife should always be number 1. I mean, I hope I would have to fight my daughter for that spot. Like, I'm okay if like we're both 1. But essentially football, it just like kind of was lower in the totem pole. I feel like anybody would understand that, okay? I want GMs hearing that, because GMs and coaches want football to be the main priority. But we made that decision as a family and together, and I'm grateful that my husband was like open to doing that. So he was there for the entire postpartum period, and I feel like having a supportive partner post-birth either makes or breaks your postpartum experience. I'm not talking mental health and postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. I'm talking about just mentally recovering from birth, acclimating to this new lifestyle. Having a supportive partner is everything. So whenever you're dating a guy and you're like, oh, he won't text me back, do you think he's going to be changing your diapers postpartum? That's what I want you guys to reflect on. So if you cannot honestly answer that, yes, then he's probably not the one. So Isaac was great throughout my postpartum experience. I've never talked about this part of my postpartum experience, but a week or so after I gave birth, I had not pooped yet. Okay. So I think I went 10 days, and I don't recommend doing that. Because I was taking like a lot of Tylenol. Once the pain hit, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to like suffer through the pain. So I ended up taking Tylenol, and like, I think I took like pain medication a few times, maybe like once or twice. And that can kind of like dehydrate you. Also, like birth, like all that's traumatic, okay? Your body's dehydrated. I'm breastfeeding. So I was not drinking enough water, and I was not taking my Colace, okay? Stool softener. Yeah, we're getting real graphic on today's episode. So I ended up getting rehospitalized. There was a night, I think it was like a week and a half postpartum, and my fever hit 103. I called my OBGYN, he was like, yeah, that's something that you like, don't call me. He was like, go to the hospital. What are you doing? So I ended up going to the hospital and I had my husband and newborn baby sitting in the car while I was in the emergency room. Because if you think I gave birth in December, it was cold, it's cold and flu season, RSV, and I didn't want to put my daughter at risk. I'm like, absolutely not. So this is the first overnight I did away from my daughter was at a week and a half postpartum. So I'm in the hospital, I'm in the ER, and they come in and they say, okay, well, we're gonna take you for a CT with contrast, okay? So automatically, like I'm having to pump because I'm not with my daughter. She obviously needs milk. She's sitting in the car. And she's sleeping in the car. She's sleeping in the car. Obviously, the car was off. My husband was there. Once I got admitted and I saw how busy the ER was, I was like, you know what, just go home and I'll call you when to come back. I mean, you're not sleeping postpartum anyways, or with a fresh baby. So I was like, if I text you, you'll be up. So I got a CT with contrast and they found a pocket of fluid in my abdomen and they're like, okay, so you might be going sepsis. So we're going to admit you. And I was like, wait, I thought I was going to come in for antibiotics and leave. And they were like, no. So, and I guess there were no rooms available. So I was sitting in the ER. I was crying. I was hooked up to an IV. I was pumping. And I just like wanted to be at home with my newborn baby, like soaking in this newborn bliss that everybody talks about that I didn't get to have because I was in the hospital. So I got readmitted. Isaac ended up coming back with the baby. This honestly all feels like such a blur. I feel like I blacked out the few weeks postpartum. So I got rehospitalized. They finally released me out of the hospital on Christmas Eve, but I'm allergic to a certain medication that they would have treated this infection with. So I had to stop breastfeeding. I had pumped enough milk postpartum to give her for 3 days while I took 3 days worth of medication. And honestly, that's like it's just so annoying because this kind of sent me on the trajectory of having a bad postpartum experience. Now, this is why I feel so bad ever talking about a negative experience relating to postpartum, because I hate the fact that people are automatically going to assume it's because I'm struggling with being a mom or like I don't like my daughter. I don't feel like the love for her. No, it has nothing to do with my daughter. And I want to make that very abundantly clear is it has nothing to do with her. And some moms, it does. And that's okay because you're going through so many hormone changes and so much postpartum. Does anyone else see the 17 diapers video going viral on TikTok? Everyone's like obliterating this mom for having 17 diapers, okay? No, I didn't have 17 diapers laying around, but I also had a husband walking around after me, picking up everything that I had and taking care of me. And not everybody has that. Postpartum, I literally threw an acai bowl against the wall, okay? You're going through so much postpartum. So if I did feel postpartum like blues towards my daughter, that would even be okay. But at the end of the day, I didn't. And so whenever I have this negative look at my postpartum experience, I kind of blame myself for it because, well, I blame myself and I just blame I blame the universe. I'm like, God, is Mercury in retrograde? Because, well, I feel like I always blame it on Mercury being in retrograde. It's not always in retrograde. But so that was like a lot. I feel like that was a lot. That was like the initial jump into being a mom. And it wasn't everything that I had been like dreaming of, right? Like you have an idea in your head of what it's going to look like. And for me, it didn't look like anything. I was not in Vegas. So it was like a weird experience. And then I started feeling the postpartum blues. And then I knew we were moving. If I have any regret in my entire life, I would have one thing to say, and that's that I regret moving to Texas. Something I feel like the NFL, not the NFL as an organization, but football and Isaac's experience playing football, I feel like we have never really had a sense of home. And I think even now, me being 10 months postpartum and having a little identity crisis, it makes sense because football kind of throws you into like a lot of different experiences, a lot of different friend groups. Like I have not lived in the same place the past 4 years. And again, thank God I made that disclaimer early in the podcast. I know we chose that lifestyle. But just because we choose that lifestyle doesn't mean I don't get to have thoughts and feelings that are negative towards it, you know? With the holidays right around the corner and my favorite holiday, Halloween, even closer, I've been feeling a little nostalgic, right? Nostalgic because this is my first year as a mom and it reminds me of the good old days and like old traditions. And somewhere I used to frequent a ton with my friends was Applebee's. And now that they have this new Halloween drink I'm about to tell you guys about, I might have to pay a visit before we head to the pumpkin patch this year. So, Applebee's truly has something for everyone. I mean, I'm looking at their menu right now. They have steak and ribs, burger, pasta. If it wasn't 10 a.m., I would literally head over there right this second. They also have dessert, and the dessert looks so good. But they also have drinks. And thanks to the popularity of the Dollarita, the $1 margarita, yeah, you heard that right, I would eat that up, or should I say drink. This spooky season, Applebee's is bringing back the Dollar Zombie, okay? So the Dollar Zombie is a $1 infectious rum cocktail, $1, like 4 quarters. The drink is a blue rum cocktail, and it's topped with a gummy brain. Just like, we want to talk about nostalgic. I feel like I would order the drink just for this gummy brain. Okay, I'm a child at heart. It's only $1, making it the perfect drink to enjoy all October, especially before any Halloween events, like the pumpkin patch, or you're getting some apples and cider. It's perfect, right? It's sure to infect your night with a good time. You see what I did there? So come into Applebee's and enjoy this spooky cocktail before they're gone. They're only available until November 3rd. Okay, I'm going to tell you about my new obsession. It's HydroJug. You guys know I've been on my pumping journey and my supply is always fluctuating, which is annoying, but something I've realized that impacts it is my water intake. Now, I've tried other popular water bottle brands, but they spill or they don't fit in my cup holder. So essentially, I can't really bring them everywhere with me. They're only convenient for at home, and even then, I have a 10-month-old daughter and she's always grabbing for it. So then it spills and it's just a huge mess. Last month, I discovered the HydroJug Traveler, and it is one of my new favorites because it's leak-proof, cup holder compatible, and has a hygienic circular flip straw for easy sipping. I recently went to a girls' night at my friend's house, and I flipped down my straw, threw it in my purse, and it might sound like something that isn't that important, but as somebody who's always forgetting their water bottle at places, it's the little things in life, okay? It makes drinking water a lot more enjoyable. You guys, I can't believe I'm this obsessed with a water bottle, but I am. So take my advice and try replacing your current water bottle with one of these. I'm telling you, it is actually the best. Like, I'm looking forward to being tagged in some of your stories, okay? It'll make you drink more water, which I feel like we all need to do, right? And it's so convenient and easy to just bring around. Like I said, you just flip down the straw, throw it in your purse, and it can go anywhere with you, and you're not going to forget it. The HydroJug Traveler comes in multiple colors and sizes, 40 ounce, 32 ounce, 20 ounce, so you can find the perfect bottle that matches your style. And I'm so looking forward to getting Scotty one of her own. So get your HydroJug Traveler at www.thehydrojug.com and use discount code SSC to get 10% off your order today. HydroJugs are the game changer for anyone on the go. You guys know I'm always on the go. Again, use code SSC at www.thehydrojug.com to get 10% off today and start hydrating. HydroJugs are a game changer for anybody on the go. So, yeah, I feel like the thing I most regret in my life and even in postpartum was moving to Texas. I think we had this idea like, oh my God, we've been through so much the past 4 years with moving to Cleveland and Indiana and California and then Vegas and all of this. We had so much change that Isaac and I were just like, holy fuck, I need to breathe. And we looked at Texas as that opportunity. So I feel like I've never really talked about Texas in general. Isaac and I, we own our house here in Orange County, California. Okay. We've always seen like raising our children here and loving it here. All of our friends are here. My sister lives in San Diego. Like my brother lives in Arizona. California is just home to us. Okay. Now we know California has a lot of taxes and it's very expensive to live here. So we were like, you know what? We have nothing to lose. Why don't we try out a different state that we've never lived in before? Okay. Texas, everybody loves talking about how great it is to move to Texas because you get a lot more bang for your buck. And I don't regret moving there only because I'm so confident with us living where we're currently living. But I also still kind of regret it. So we ended up buying a house in Texas, okay? It was outside Fort Worth. I've never really even talked about where it was at. It was in the country, okay? And we had a few friends that lived around Dallas and around Fort Worth. I also was with a previous social media management company, okay? This is tea. That I ended up leaving them, okay? There was a lot of reasons as to why I left my social media company. Okay. I left them when I was pregnant and it was fucking hell. I was calling my lawyer more than I was calling my OBGYN. And that's not something you want to go through postpartum. And they made it hell for me to leave. Okay. I want to make that very abundantly clear. And I've never talked about this publicly because honestly, I feel like my lawyer would maybe advise against it. But at the same time, I didn't sign no NDA. And they made it fucking hell. They made my pregnancy fucking hell. I was not able to, I stopped taking an income because I was trying to leave them and it made more difficult. Like it was so messy, okay? So their headquarters was in Texas. And so when we made the decision to buy a house in Texas, it kind of made sense because I was like, oh, my social media management team is there and yada, yada, yada. They didn't really have a huge part in, like, they didn't tell me to buy a house in Texas. No, that was all me and Isaac's decision. But like we saw Texas as so many benefits, okay? Once we moved there, we quickly realized like home is like where your friends are. It's where you're comfortable. It's where you love living. And this sounds so, I don't even know how to say this without sounding like a stuck-up bitch, but like money can't buy you happiness, right? Like getting a bigger house and having more money, like less taxes in Texas, that was not going to make us happy. And I'm glad that we learned that. So then Texas was, oh my God, horrible postpartum, okay? I hit the trenches. I was so depressed that like I didn't even want to go into a doctor to talk about my depression. So I found this app. This sounds sponsored. It's definitely not. But I didn't know about this until my one of my friends recommended me doing this because she had done it. Is that I went onto an app and I it's called Hers, and I filled out like how I was feeling, my thoughts and feelings, and I was prescribed anti-anxiety medication through an app. Thank God, because I was not going into a doctor's office. I did not feel comfortable talking to anybody. I had such severe anxiety. Again, not even relating to my daughter, literally just like a mental battle in my own head. So I ended up getting medicated. If I was not medicated, I honestly don't even know what Texas would have looked like. So the first few days of us living in Texas, I was like, oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. What did I get myself into? Oops. Had it not been for, this sounds so stupid. Had it not been for social media, I would have immediately left Texas because I hated it that much. Okay. Now you might be thinking, oh, like you bought the house, you went to Texas a few times. I was pregnant. I was in pregnancy bliss. I was like, oh, this is so cute. Like I get a huge room for her and a huge yard for the dogs. Our dogs hated Texas because they were like, wait, I don't care about all this land. Like we don't see anybody to bark at. Like we don't go for very many walks because we live in this depressing neighborhood. This was all self-inflicted. I am fully aware of that. And I also know I'm fully aware that I sound privileged when I complain about buying a house in a different state and like giving it a try. Okay. I understand that. But at the same time, again, I'm just trying to talk very raw and real about what I was actually thinking and what I was feeling. So Texas was horrible. We left every opportunity that we got the chance to leave. Okay. Now, I'm not hating on Texas because I genuinely can understand how somebody would love Texas, right? But that was just not home for us, and that's okay. So I think it was, I don't even know when it was. Isaac and I had always played with the idea of like maybe moving back or maybe doing this or maybe doing that. And I think I sent him like a Zillow listing of a rental property, and I was like, hey, like let's let's call our real estate agent and have her go look at it. She went and looked at it, and it's the house we're currently renting. And I was like, yeah. I was like, okay, so when's moving? She was like, in 30 days. And I go, yeah, let's do it. And I just like, I was not okay in Texas. I was away from all my friends and family. I felt so isolated. I was a new mom. I was struggling so much. My daughter had stopped latching. I had started exclusively pumping. There was so much that, oh my God, I'm just like in hindsight looking at like postpartum. It has nothing to do with my daughter and everything to do with like situations. And like, I thought this would make me happy and I thought this would make me happy. And honestly, I think the thing that would have made me happiest was just sitting still and just enjoying being a mom. But I didn't get to do that. So I ended up leaving Texas. But while I was in Texas, I became so it's weird because, right, like I'm on social media. I made a video every single day when I was in Texas. I don't even remember what I even talked about in those few months in Texas. Texas feels like a blur to me. I feel like I blacked out because I wasn't enjoying it. And I think when I look at postpartum, it's like, what would I change postpartum? I would have changed a lot. Like I would have taken better care of myself. I would have like put my mental first. I would have invited out friends. Like I still have friends who really haven't came and see me. And is that me? Is that a me problem? Is that a them problem? I don't even know. But I feel like the next baby I have, okay, I know that like I'm going to be like I'm not making any plans, I'm not doing anything, I'm not going and seeing anyone. I'm going to literally have nothing planned except like morning walks to leave the house and like having friends come over, and like I just want it to be a very relaxed experience because all of this was a fucking roller coaster, right? Like when I had my daughter, it was a roller coaster, okay? I don't recommend doing that for anybody. Don't plan on moving postpartum. Don't like honestly, if I were to give any advice for postpartum, it would be to cancel everything. Cancel all your plans, cancel everything except like leaving your house every few days or going and getting dinner with your new baby. I think those were the things that I really enjoyed, and those are the things I couldn't even do in Texas because we lived so far out in the country and we had no friends in Texas. So like what was I planning on doing? Going out to dinner with my husband and daughter every single time. And like, I didn't talk to anybody when we lived in Texas. Like it was so bad. Oh my gosh. But I ended up moving back to California. And I feel like that's really when Isaac and I started to like get into the groove of things and finally like were able to enjoy parenthood and like really fall back into it. So like going to the dog beach, like that's something that like we love doing as a family. We started to be able to do that. We started going to like trail walks. There's like one of our favorite coffee shops has a trail by it, and we started being able to do that. And like we were finally leaving the house and we felt comfortable, and then we started getting into the swing of things that I feel like people get to earlier in postpartum because they're living where they're supposed to be living. And so I feel like I started finally getting into postpartum and the flow of things when we moved back to California because I had a reason to leave my house, and I had friends that I could see, and I had like, we weren't in the middle of nowhere. So at the end of the day, if I was like, oh, I want to go grab a cup of coffee, it was 5 minutes away. Whereas in Texas, it was 30 minutes away. And I'm like, I'm not leaving my daughter. I was exclusively pumping. And so like driving in the car would have been an hour. Whereas in here, it's just so much easier living life. So we finally started to get into the swing of things here in California. And ever since, it's just been like, okay, now we're adjusting to this. Now we're adjusting to that. And like, we literally just hired a babysitter for the first time. And it's just been so nice, like getting time to ourselves, and me and Isaac finally like enjoying being parents, not because we hated being parents, but because we're enjoying our lives, right? Anyways, that leads us to now. So football season is here. I definitely thought Isaac would have been on a team by now. I'm not going to lie. And he would have said the same thing. He got calls in off season, and he even got calls during training camp, and calls meaning like teams call and they're like, hey, is he healthy? Is he interested? Okay, cool. Just want to like gauge his interest. Now, if you don't go to training camp, there's a lot less probability of you signing to a team during the season. There's like a 50% chance, okay? Now, injuries happen. Like, it's honestly kind of based off of like what a team needs, what players get hurt, what players are like not performing, all of that. So some people would be like, oh, Isaac should just retire then. Like, if he's not on a team, why don't you just retire? There's really no benefit to retiring right now except the social media piece. So if Isaac were to like formally retire right now, everybody on social media would like stop leaving. Hey, oh my God, give it up, blah, 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 blah. It's like all the guys that I told to get the fuck out at the beginning of this podcast. Yeah, hopefully they're not listening because they're probably getting flustered right now. There's just really no point to retiring right now. One, my husband loves the game of football and he loves pursuing football. Okay, check. That's reason enough. But two, if he plays 3 games this year, okay, that restarts insurance. That's another year of pension. That's another $1,000 every month once he starts receiving his pension. Okay. I'm sorry, but social media, like, you can only let social media affect your decisions so much. Like, I let social media basically like bully me into not leaving Texas so early. Nobody even told me that. I just felt weird telling social media that I wanted to leave so early. So like there's no reason for him to formally retire if there's still a chance he can go to a team and he still loves football. So yeah, it's weird with him not being on a team. I'm going to be very real. And I didn't think it would affect me this much. And I feel weird saying that, right? Because I'm just his wife, right? I'm just a football player's wife. If you look at a piece of paper, that's what it's going to say. Obviously, I know I'm way more than that, but at the end of the day, that's what it looks like, right? So why would a player's wife be affected by her husband not playing? And the reason is because that football has set the cadence for our life up until now. So think about holidays, friendships, community, literally a reason as to why you're living where you're living. Like, football has given both of our lives a sense of purpose, a sense of community. Like, it's given our lives a sort of cadence, right? So when he's not playing right now, I feel like me and him are just like, oh, like, wait, what are our bigger goals? Like, what's after football? Because even if he ends up playing football this season, it's like, yeah, we're towards the back end of his career. So like, what is next? And we've done a good job of like varying our source of income in other ways, right? Like Airbnbs and social media and podcasts. And Isaac loves doing on-screen, like broadcasting. And I think like there are so many other ways, right? We have income. So we're grateful in that aspect. But when it comes to like happiness, I think that's kind of where I'm struggling is like, I have an identity of being a mom and I've had an identity of being a professional football player's wife or, like Mr. Kuch. Okay. We all get that. But where I'm kind of struggling is like, okay, well, if we don't have a cadence in our life right now, like what is next? Like what does tomorrow bring? And that sounds so weird, right? Like why would somebody complain about like not having anything to do tomorrow? But like that isn't the point of life is like having like a sense of belonging and having a sense of community. And so this is the first time we have lived in California for so long, like months consecutively. Like I've never lived in California in October since he played for the Chargers. So like I'm looking around like, oh, do I have friends? Like, do I have a group of friends? And had he'd formally retired before this football season, I feel like we would have felt differently. Like I would have been all in on like staying and like making it feel home. Well, not really making it feel homey because our house is under renovation, but like I would have been all in on that idea. But because I feel like we're just floating, it's a really difficult place for me personally to be in. And I don't think that people think I'm allowed to feel that way, or at least maybe I get self-conscious about that because now this is just a therapy session. I don't feel like I'm allowed to feel an identity crisis because of football because I'm not playing football. But at the same time, it's like, well, those have been my friends for the past 7 years. That's been like my friend group is whatever team Isaac's playing for. Like I make friends there. That's been like a cadence is like, oh, like we're moving every July. And so that's not happening. And so I feel like when I go to make content, I'm like, oh, nobody actually gives a fuck about me. Like people just cared about football and they just cared about it makes me sad to think because it's like Like today I was like, "Oh, well, like we're leaving for London." When you listen to if you listen to this today, it's released. We're in London. So, I was like, "Oh, I should film like a pack with me for London or whatever." And I was like, "Well, nobody really gives a fuck." Like honestly, nobody probably cares. And it's sad because it's like I've built this platform on social media. I've talked about how TikTok and Instagram have given me a community that I get to bring everywhere, no matter what state Isaac's playing in or what team he's playing for. And so now that Isaac's not with a team, I'm like, well, people probably just don't care. And it's so sad, right? Like, because I've worked my ass off to get to the point that I'm at. But yeah, so I feel like I'm in a really weird place right now. And I'm feeling really self conscious. And I started my Wellbutrin again. Like, I feel like it's weird because I'm having an identity crisis with like, I love being a mom. Okay. I know that. And I love making content and I know that. And I love my husband and I love my family and I love California. But it's like, what makes me happy, right? Like, so I think that's kind of where I'm at, like with a life update is like, I'm trying to find like what makes Allie happy. I went on the Squeeze podcast with Taylor Lautner and I was talking to her about this and I was like, I don't like, what is Allie like? And I think I have to rediscover myself, I have to refine myself. And right now I just feel like I'm floating and I need a purpose. And so here are some fun ideas that I've floated around. One, I started hanging out with a few new friends and they all do social media. And I think that's been really good for me to have because up until this point, nobody has really understood like this side of my life. And I hate when influencers are like, "Oh my God, you don't live a day in my life." I'm not talking, I don't like referring to myself as an influencer, but I'm saying as somebody who doesn't have like a cadence to their life, I feel like this newfound friend group, I can like relate to them on that aspect. And right, like you need people to relate to throughout your life that might understand where you might be coming from because that's important, right? Like, right? Nobody's responding because you guys are listening to a podcast, but I've started to do that. I've started to try new things. So I like want to sign up for a pottery class. I want to do things that not self-care. So many people, when they see a mom taking time for themselves, they're like, oh, go get your nails done, go get your hair done. That's self-care. That's literally a basic human care. Is it getting your nails done, like getting groomed, like getting your hair done, getting groomed. Like, I don't want to take time for myself to go and do things that I don't have enough time for when it comes to like literally basic needs. And yes, I'm considering getting my nails done as basic human needs, but I'm talking about like finding myself again and like finding myself as a human outside of just being a mom because I'm so confident in the mom piece and I think I'm a great mom and I love taking care of my daughter, but I feel like I owe it to my daughter to take care of Allie too, right? Like finding what Allie likes. Like I honestly want to take surf lessons. I'm fucking terrified of the ocean and I'm scared I'm going to get bit by a shark. Um, Watching like hide and seek, they take this clip and like put it on the internet because I got bit by a shark. But like, I want to do fun new things that I have not done, and I think that's also something that I really haven't been selfish over the past 7 years of following my husband around is like I've gotten a sense of identity outside of football because I've started social media and I've made my own name for myself. But when it comes to like being selfish and like choosing myself and like figuring out like what Allie likes, I also feel like I've struggled there too because like I'm giving so much of myself to my husband and so much of myself to my daughter. And it's like I don't have anything left for myself. So where that leaves me now is like I don't really fucking know. I feel like it's me like taking time to like reflect. I want to start therapy. I want to start going to like pottery classes. I want to like maybe take horseback riding lessons. I don't fucking know. One dream I really have right now. It's not even a dream. It's something I really want to do. I really want to buy an Airstream and renovate it myself because you guys know I love interior design. I own 2 Airbnbs. Some people have some hate regarding like the housing market. People can hate on any part of my life if you really want to. Like you could be like, man, this lampshade sitting next to me is ugly. It's like you can hate on any part of my life. So like even the Airbnb thing, I feel like I'm just so self-conscious. I really like being self-aware, but it makes me so self-conscious because I'm always reflecting on that. but I want to get an Airstream and renovate it. And I just want something that I'm like looking forward to outside of waking up and hanging out with my daughter, outside of hanging out with my husband or like going on dates. I want to look forward to something for selfishly myself. And I think that's something that's so stereotypical. It's bad for moms to like look forward to things that don't involve their child or their husband. And like, why? Like Isaac loves football and that has nothing to do with his daughter and has nothing to do with me. But like for some reason, me wanting to have something outside of being a mom is like, ooh, like I hope people don't take that the wrong way. It's like, what? It's like me just being a human. And I also feel like if I'm happier in my own life, I know I'm going to be a happier mom. And also, I don't want my daughter growing up and thinking that once she has a child, she has to just dedicate her whole life to her child and everything else goes out the window, right? I want to set a good example for her. And I hope I am. I mean, I feel like over the past few years, I feel like I've been a badass and I've not cared what people have thought. And now I'm so opposite. It's like I think too much. And it's like, there was an audio. I posted a video a few weeks ago too. And it was like, anxiety means you care too much. And I care way too fucking much. And I wish I didn't. And I hopefully will work towards not caring so much. But it's all work in progress, which hopefully we're making progress. So while this episode had nothing to do with football, it had something to do with football, but I hope you guys still enjoyed it. And I think my story and my sister's story, which thank you for all the good feedback on that. I think on this podcast, I'm looking forward to telling people's story. And like, while they it doesn't have to be so sports forward. Hopefully you guys can resonate with some of the stories that I'm telling on here. And like, it doesn't have to be all about football, all about basketball, all about baseball. I want to hear about people's journeys throughout life. And it can be related back to sports, right? Like nobody just wants to hear about the fucking stats. I hate stats. And so if you guys enjoyed this episode, feel free to let me know. I have some guests coming on the podcast later this season that have really great stories that are sports adjacent. And so I'm hoping you guys are looking forward to those types of episodes too. I love the huddle episodes with Isaac. Every Thursday we like talk about like what's happening in sports. And I think those are really great for like learning more about football and sports. But I think these are the stories that I really genuinely love telling, which is weird because I just sat and talked to my camera for like 40 minutes. But I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you didn't, and if you think that you can give me some sort of feedback, feel free to go and leave some feedback because I'm a work in progress, okay? I like being self-aware. But thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's podcast. If you guys aren't following my personal Instagram, I'm heading to London. So I'll be in London when this episode releases and doing tons of fun stuff over there related to football, of course. So feel free to go and give me a follow over there. And be sure to leave be sure to leave this podcast a 5-star review so that other people can find it. But thank you guys for tuning in and listening to me rant and talk to myself. I appreciate you for being here. And I'm really grateful that I have the community that I have because I genuinely feel so much support from you guys. But thank you for tuning in. Be sure to catch us every Thursday and Sunday, wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, sports aren't just for boys anymore.